We are going to discuss the poem Lines Composed About Tintern Abbey by William Wordsworth, and this is part second of the presentation. We have seen in presentation first that the life of William Wordsworth had taken a considerable turn. He had split with his French lover and their illegitimate daughter. On the other hand, on a broader note, Anglo-French tensions had escalated to a great extent, and Britain would declare war later that year, it was expected. The Wye Valley, on the other hand, had remained much the same. It did not change much, and according to the poet William Wordsworth, it was an opportunity for contrast. The major and large portion of the poem explores the impact of preterition, which means the action of passing over, contrasting the obviousness of it in the visitor with its seamlessness in the visited. This theme is emphasized from the start of the poem in the line 5 years have passed. Although the poem was written in 1798, this poem is in large part a recollection of Wordsworth's first visit of the Wye Valley in 1793. It also harks back in the imagination to a time when the abbey was not in ruins, and dwells occasionally on the present and the future as well. The speaker admits to having reminisced about the place many times in the past 5 years. Notably, the abbey itself is nowhere described. Wordsworth claimed to have composed the poem entirely in his head, beginning it upon leaving Tintern and crossing the Wye, and not jotting so much as a line until he reached Bristol, by which time it had just reached mental completion. In all, it took him 4 to 5 days rambling about with his sister. Although Lyrical Ballads was by then already in publication, he was so pleased with this offering that he had it inserted at the 11th hour as the concluding poem. Although never overt, the poem is riddled with religion, most of it pantheistic. Overt means something which is not done secretly, and pantheism is a belief that reality is identical with divinity, or that all things compose an all-compassing immanent God. The poem is not done secretly, and it is riddled with religion. That means the reality is identical with divinity. This is what Wordsworth tries to explain to the readers. Wordsworth styles himself as a worshipper of nature with a far deeper zeal of holier love, seeming to hold that mental images of nature can engender a mystical intuition of the divine. Now we discuss the style and structure of the poem. This poem is written in tightly structured blank verse, and it comprises verse paragraphs rather than stanzas. It is unrhymed and mostly in iambic pentameter. Categorizing the poem is difficult as it contains elements of all of the ode, the dramatic monologue, and the conversation poem. In the second edition of Lyrical Ballads, Wordsworth noted, "I have not ventured to call this poem an ode, but it was written with a hope that in the transitions and in the impassioned music of the versification would be found the principal requisites of that species of composition. At its beginning, it may well be dubbed an 18th century landscape poem, but it is commonly agreed that the best designation would be the conversation poem." Now we summarize the poem according to the stanzas. Stanza 1 begins in the present, as the speaker describes the beauty around him. In stanza 2, the poet departs to the past, as the speaker remembers how scenes of the place sustained him the past 5 years. In stanza 3, we return to the present as the speaker contemplates his connection to nature. In stanza 4, the poet tells the reader the speaker's joy at being back in such a wonderful place, as his happiness at the new memories being formed. In stanza 5, Wordsworth explains to the reader the connection he feels between nature and his sister. In lines 1 to 24, the poet discusses the revisiting of the natural beauty of the Wye Valley, which fills him with a sense of tranquil restoration. In line 37, he says, "By the sublime." Wordsworth means a type of divine creativity or inspiration. This was a theme much in vogue during the Romantic period. In lines 35 to 39, Wordsworth says that the gifts given to him by the Abbey, such as tranquil restoration, have in so doing accorded him yet another still more sublime. It has relieved him of a giant burden, his doubts about God, religion, and the meaning of life. Lines 88 to 103. These are the most important and concluding lines of this poem. After contemplating the few changes in scenery since last he visited, Wordsworth is overcome with a sense sublime of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns. He is met with the divine as a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of thought, and rolls through all things. These are perhaps the most telling lines in Wordsworth's connection of the sublime with divine creativity, the result of allowing nature to become the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart, and soul of all my moral being. Lines 114 to 160. In the final stanza, Wordsworth addresses his sister Dorothy, who did not accompany him on his original visit to the Abbey. And Wordsworth can perceive in the delight which Dorothy shows at the resplendence and serenity of their environs. Resplendence means brightly colored in an attractive and impressive way. The resplendence and serenity of their environs, a poignant echo of his former self. Poignant means causing sadness or pity. Wordsworth can perceive the delight which Dorothy shows. The reflection of this delight is seen as a poignant echo of Wordsworth's former self when he first visited Tintern Abbey. Let us now discuss some of the literary devices used in this poem. The tone of Tintern Abbey is nostalgic and of hope of the future. Wordsworth writes in this poem, "To them memories I may have owed another gift, a blessed mood." Another example, "Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and mountains." Imagery is also used in this poem. It plays a vital part as Wordsworth paints vivid pictures of the scenery. For example, waters rolling from their mountain springs. Another example, the mountain and the deep and gloomy wood. Coming to more of the literary devices used in this poem, we have symbolism which is prevalent throughout the poem, though one stands out. In a poem about maturity, unripe fruit symbolizes the young speaker's transformation into a ripened speaker towards the end. Personification is used to bring the Wye River to life as the speaker's spiritual place, a living place. For example, Wordsworth addresses the Wye Valley as, "O Sylvan Wye, thou wanderer through the woods, how often has my spirit turned to thee." Coming to more of literary devices, we see there are multiple themes in Tintern Abbey, most encompassing memories and their effects on life. For example, Wordsworth writes, "Felt in blood and felt along the heart." Another example, "Nor wilt thou then forget that after many wanderings, many years of absence." The diction and form of the poem tend to hold the reader and impact him in a personal way. Diction is forthright and spoken from the heart in a plain manner. The combination of blank verse and unrhymed iambic pentameter is also very significant. What Wordsworth felt after writing this poem is expressed in these final thoughts and conclusion of this poem. Tintern Abbey focuses on memories, specifically childhood memories and their effect on adulthood. It addresses the pure relationship with nature in childhood and how that relationship gradually dissipates, slowly becomes less until it disappears in adulthood. But maturity of the mind in adulthood compensates for the loss of the purity.